Hi, welcome to this video. In this video, I will talk about JavaScript scope. To work with JavaScript efficiently, one of the first things you need to understand is the concept of variable scope. The scope of a variable is controlled by the location of variable declaration. Scoping rules vary from language to language. JavaScript has two scopes, global and local. Any variable declared outside of function belongs to global scope, and therefore it is accessible from anywhere in your code. All the scripts and functions on your web page can access it. As you can see, I just added a function and a variable x outside of this function. This variable x has a global scope, which means you can access this global variable x inside this function and also outside of this function. Let me access this global variable x inside this function. I will use alert, and inside the alert I will access the global variable x like this way. And now I will copy this line of code and I will paste it outside of this function, and I will say accessed outside of a function. So you can access a global variable inside a function and outside a function. I will go ahead, I will save this script. I will open index.html file. So this alert box execution is performed inside the function, and you can see the global variable x is accessible inside a function. I will go ahead, I will click on the OK, and this is the alert box execution outside of the function, and you can see the global variable x is accessible from outside of the function. I will go ahead, I will click on the OK. This global variable x will be deleted when a user closes this window like this. So this is the example of global scope in JavaScript. Each function has its own scope, which means a variable declared inside a function is only accessible in that function. As you can see, I just added a function, my function2, and inside this function I have declared a variable y. This variable y variable has a local scope, and this variable y is only accessible inside this function. If you try to access this variable y outside of a function, it will generate an error. Let me access this variable y inside a function. I will use document .write method, and now I will access the variable y like this, y is equal to, and now the variable y, and I will say accessed inside of a function. I will copy this line of code and I will paste it outside of this function, and I will say accessed outside of a function. This line of code will generate an error because I am trying to access a local scope variable outside of a function. I will also comment out these two alerts. I will go ahead, I will save this script. I'll refresh the browser, so you can see y is equal to 50 accessed inside of a function. So this local variable y is accessible inside this function, but what happened to this line of code? It has generated an error. Let me show you the error. I'll right click, I'll select inspect, I'll choose console, and you can see it is stating y is not defined on line 28. And on the line 28, I have a line of statement which is accessing a local scope variable. So local scope variables are not allowed or not accessible outside of a function. Local scope in JavaScript is created by a function. So therefore it is also called function scope. And local variables are deleted when this function is completed. So this was the example of local scope in JavaScript. There is another way to make a global variable is to just initialize it and not to declare it. It will automatically become a global variable. Let me give you an example of an automatic global variable. I will comment out this line of code because it is generating an error. I will create some space, and now I will add a third function. As you can see, I just added a third function, and inside this function I have variable z, and this variable z is just initialized by the value of 100. Now notice I didn't add the var keyword. It is not declared. So by this way, this variable z has a global scope, and this variable z is accessible outside of this function and also inside of this function. Let me access this variable z inside of this function. I will copy this line of code. I will also comment out this line of code because I don't need it. I will paste it inside this function. I will replace y with the z. So using this line of statement, I am accessing the variable z inside of this function. And I will also copy this line of code. I will paste it outside of this function and I will say accessed outside of this function. So now in this case, this line of code will not generate an error because the variable z has global scope just by assigning it a value. I'll go ahead, I'll save this script. I will close this console window. I'll refresh the page. Let me add a line break so you can see it clearly. I will add a line break. I'll save it again. I'll refresh the browser. So now you can see z is accessible inside of a function and also it is accessible outside of a function. As you can see, if you just initialize a variable inside of a function and not to declare it, it will become a global variable and you can access it inside of this function and also outside of this function. And this variable will be deleted as soon as user close this browser window. So in this video, I covered the scoping rules in JavaScript. Hi, welcome to this video. In this video, I will talk about JavaScript nested functions. In JavaScript, it is possible to nest a function. So you can define a function inside another function. I will give you an example of nested function. I will declare a function. I will give it a name, outer function. And inside this outer function, I am going to define one another function. I will give it a name, inner function. And inside this inner function, I will execute a line of code. I will use document.write method. I will say code execution inside inner or tested function. And now I will invoke this inner function inside the outer function. And I will also need to invoke this outer function. I will go ahead, I will save this script. I will open index.html file. So you can see code execution inside inner or nested function. So by this way, you can nest a function inside a function. Nested functions have interesting scoping rules. A nested function can access any variable and parameter of the outer or parent function. I will create some space. And as you can see, I just added a function and inside that I have nested a function. You can see there is a variable d which is declared inside the outer function. And the outer function has two parameters x and y. And inside the nested function, I have variable g. As you know, this variable g has local scope inside this inner function, and it is very easy to access this variable g inside the inner function. But what about the variable d and x and y? You can also access the variable of outer function, I mean the variable d, and you can also access the parameters of outer function, I mean x and y. Let me show you how you can access the variable and parameters of outer function inside the nested function. I will use document.write. First, I will access the variable g, which is local to the nested function. I will add the variable g and I will add the line break. Now I will copy this line of code for the 3 more times. Now I will access the variable d, which is declared inside the outer function, and I will also try to access the parameter x, which are the parameter of outer function, x and y both. I will go ahead, I will save this script, but before that I will comment out this line of code. I'll save it again. I'll refresh the page, so you can see in the nested function the variable g is accessible, which has local scope, but you can also access the global variable d, which is declared inside the outer function. Along with the global variable, you can also access the parameter x and y of the outer function. So this is to just give you an example of how variable scoping works inside the nested function. In this video, I covered how you can write nested functions and how you can access variables of the outer functions inside the nested function. Hi, welcome to this video. In this video, I will talk about JavaScript dialog boxes. JavaScript supports 3 types of dialog boxes. These dialog boxes are used to alert some message, get some confirmation, and ask for some user input. An alert box is most commonly used box to give a message to the users. I will write JavaScript built-in function alert with some specified message. I will say welcome to this website. This alert function is JavaScript core function to pop up some message to the user with OK button. I will go ahead, I will save this script. I will open index.html file. So you can see this is alert dialog box with a specified message and an OK button. I will click on the OK button. And now I will move forward and I will give you the example of second dialog box, which is confirmation dialog box or confirm box. You use confirm function of the JavaScript and then you specify some message. I'll say, do you want us to send you daily news? This confirm box will show up with OK and cancel button. I'll go ahead, I'll save this script. I'll refresh the page. This is the alert box and this is the confirmation box. This confirm box is used to ask user for some verification. As in this case, I am asking user, do you want us to send you daily news? And if the user clicks on the OK button, this confirm box will return true. If user clicks on the cancel button, this confirm dialog box will return false, and based on the return value, further operation is performed. I will click on the OK. Let me save the return value of this confirm box inside a variable. I will declare a variable. I will give it a name v, and based on this value, based on this variable value, I will perform some further operation. I will declare an if statement, and inside the if I will use v. If this v is true, then I will write a message document.write. I'll say okay, we will send you daily news. And in the else statement, if this confirm box returns false, I'll say okay, we will not send you daily news. I'll save this script again. I'll refresh the page. This is the alert box and this is the confirmation box. Now I am going to click on the OK. So you can see, okay, we will send you daily news. I'll refresh this page again. And now in this time, I will click on the cancel. So it is saying, okay, we will not send you daily news. So the confirm box is used to ask for some confirmation or for some verification. The third dialog box in JavaScript is prompt box. You use the JavaScript built-in function prompt and then you specify some message. In this case, I will ask user for the age and I will store the return value in some variable. I will declare a variable visitor age, and based on the value of visitor age, I will perform some further action. I'll say if the visitor age is greater than or equal to 18, then I will simply display a message. I'll say you are good to go. And inside the else statement, if the user age is not greater than or equal to 18, then I will say you are not good to go. I'll save this script, but before that let me comment out this alert box and also this confirmation box. I'll save this script. I'll refresh the page, so you can see this is the prompt box and it is asking the user for the age. Now I will enter 25 and I will click on the OK button, so you can see it is saying you are good to go. If I refresh this page, if I enter 16, it will say you are not good to go. I'll refresh it again, and if I press it on the cancel, it will just simply ignore it, or it will, I think, return some dummy data or maybe undefined. I think in this case it is returning the undefined. Let me output the value of visitor age in case of cancel. Document.write, and I will simply print out the visitor age. I'll save the script again and I'll refresh the page, and in this case I will click on the cancel button, so you can see it is returning null. So these were the examples of dialog boxes. The first we discussed the alert dialog box, and then we discussed confirm, and after that we discussed the prompt dialog box. Hi, welcome to this video. In this video I will show you how you can write and execute functions inside console window. I will right click on this page, I will select inspect, and then I will choose console window. Inside the console window you can write JavaScript functions and you can execute them at runtime. I will write my function, I will use the function keyword and then name of the function and then parenthesis and opening curly brace. Now I will enter shift plus enter. It will take me to the new line, and here I will simply display a message. I will say document.write and I'll say hello to the function. I will again enter shift plus enter and I will add the closing curly brace, and now I will press enter. You see it returned undefined because this function has nothing to return. Now I will invoke this function inside the console window. I'll say my message and then invoke operator, and then I will press enter. So you can see the result of this function inside the browser. So by this way you can write functions inside the console window and you can execute them at the runtime. Now let me write another function with a return value. I will give it a name add with two parameters x and y, and then opening curly brace, and then I will enter shift plus enter. Inside that I will declare a variable k and I will assign the addition of x and y to the variable k. I will again enter shift plus enter and I will use the return statement and I will simply return the value of k. I will again press shift plus enter and the closing curly brace, and now I will press enter. Now I will invoke the function add and I will pass two arguments 10 and 20, and now I will press enter. So you can see it returns the addition of x and y. Now let me clear this console window and I will write another function, and it will be a self-executing anonymous function and then opening brace, and inside that I'll simply alert a message. I'll say auto show up message, the closing brace for the function, and then the closing parenthesis for the wrapper, and then the auto invoke operator, and now I will hit enter. So you can see it show up an alert box with auto show up message. So inside the console window, you can also write functions and you can execute or invoke them at the runtime.